Hello, welcome to this session. After last session, which was very interesting, we are talking about innovation and resilience. Both these words have uh, acquired a greater meaning because of the current pandemic situation. And we will try to see in this 1 hour how both can coexist with each other. And without further ado, I will like to ask the Honorable Minister for Communication and Information of Indonesia, Johnny Plate, to start his presentation. Thank you. And sir, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so delighted to be here to give my insight into GovInsider Live Festival of Innovations. I hope our session today will be fruitful for us to find the best way to enhance the digital resiliency in our respective countries. Accelerating the digital transformation agenda has been one of Indonesia's core policy pillars. A robust digital ecosystem is needed to realize the 2045 visions of Indonesia Maju or Advanced Indonesia, where Indonesia is projected to be one of the top five world economic giants with a total gross domestic product of 7 trillion US dollars. In an era where being digital is inevitable, a holistic digital transformations approach that ranges from infrastructure development to digital capacity improvement is necessary further to enhance the digital resilience of the Indonesia society. In today's presentation, I will first outline the national digital transformations of Indonesia and explain further how the digital transformations accelerations will help Indonesia becoming a more resilient nation in the future. The recent development of the pandemic has given rise to online activities. Indonesia has never been in the position like nowadays, where the digital technology is urgently needed more than ever to support the people's daily life, as well as fostering the national revitalizations and recovery in many various sectors. Despite all challenges that have risen, the government of Indonesia believes that the pandemic has also opened the opportunities to accelerate the national digital transformations agenda further. However, to create a strong basis for the digital ecosystem to prosper. Earlier in August, President Joko Widodo has given the national directives on digital transformations accelerations. President Jokowi believes Indonesia must seize the moment to increase the digital resiliency and capacity by expediting the digital transformation process. The Ministry of Communication and Information Technology will be the leading institutions in the digital transformation agenda. These directives are translated to become the ministry policies priorities for in five main sectors. Those are one, accelerating the expansions of internet access and improving the digital infrastructure. Second, designing roadmaps on digital transformation on strategic sectors. The third, expediting the integrations of data and establishments of the National Data Center. Fourth, preparing human resources development in the digital sector. And the fifth, completing any necessary regulations and financing schemes to support the digital transformation process. To become a resilient digital nation, Indonesia also catered to the adoptions of the new technologies, the improvement of digital talent, and the adequate regulations, along with the massive infrastructure development. Indonesia envisions establishing the National Data Center to realize national data integrations. Indonesia is also committed to enhance the service and experience qualities of the telecommunications users and aims to build a national telecommunications monitor center soon. Moreover, the ministry is currently doing the frequency reallocations through frequency farming and refarming, as well as preparing the 5G network development. As with the digital talent improvement, the ministry has already initiated several significant training stimuli to increase the nation's digital capacity through programs such as the National Digital Literacy Movement Cybercreasi, the Digital Talent Scholarship, and the Digital Leadership Academy. We also put our attention in talent development in the digital economy through initiatives such as MSMEs Go Online, 1,000 National Startup Movement, and many more. Indonesia also committed to expediting the process of several primary legislation, namely personal data protection regulations. On top of that, we also aim to broaden our international collaborations, data flow, and digital economy enhancement. Resilient digital society is not only invisible of technical aspects of cybersecurity threats, it must possess an excellent skill in responding to the various non-technical cybersecurity threats, such as scam, phishing, as well as hoax and disinformations. These are considered as the most significant threats of the moment. In responding to such threats, the government of Indonesia initiated out a three-layer strategy in tackling hoax and misinformation divided as follows. Upstreams, the ministry works together with the local communities, academicians, civil societies, media, and the private sector to massively conduct campaigns, educational classes, and training on digital literacy through the National Movement of Digital Literacy, Cybercreasi, as earlier mentioned. Digital literacy improvement is one of the foremost foundations and a sustainable solutions to build a resilient society against the fake news and misinformations. Just yesterday, Cybercreasi has the honor to receive the title of World Summit on Information Society, WSIS Prizes 2020 winner for its contribution to enhancing the digital capacity and literacy in Indonesia. In the middle stream, the ministry actively monitors and takes necessary actions upon the circulations of harmful content on the internet. To give some examples, since the early development of the pandemic, the ministry monitors the daily circulations of COVID-related hoaxes in social media. Since January until today, there are 1,093, nearly 1,100 disinformation issues and 1,920 hoaxes containing posts from four main social media in Indonesia: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Infodemic, of course. The ministry supports law enforcement by escalating cases of the spreading of fake news to be processed by the Criminal Investigation Agency of the Indonesian National Police. To anticipate the propagations of fake news during the 2020 simultaneous regional elections, we call it Pilkada Serentak 2020. The ministry will collaborate with the Indonesian National Police, General Election Commissions, and Election Supervisory Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, building cyber resilience across the nation should not only the interest of solely the government. It is our collective goal to educate, encourage, and spread awareness to ensure a better understanding of today's emerging cyber threats in our society. Therefore, I humbly encourage my colleagues to present here to share their knowledge and best practices in tackling the cyber threats in their respective countries, as well as to work together to build and transform ourselves into a positive and productive digital society. I'm very sorry this morning I cannot take questions and answers since I have another meeting sessions and I have to attend, which I have to attend. But bear in mind that I always love to answer all questions sending to me, and I will come back and answer in writing. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Minister, for a wonderful presentation. And it was very informative. And I fully understand that thanks to your busy schedule, you will not be able to stay with us. But it was wonderful having you. And please do illuminate us and about the various initiatives that Indonesia is taking in the domain of cybersecurity. Have a wonderful day, sir.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Okay, now after that wonderful presentation by the Minister for Communications and Information in Indonesia, may I invite Gwenda Fong, who's Assistant Chief Executive of the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, to give her presentation. Thank you, Gwenda. Over to you.
Thank you, Amit. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good day to you. I'm pleased to join you at GovInsider Live today. I would like to thank GovInsider for organizing this discussion. The topic of building digital innovation and resilience is indeed a timely one, especially with the backdrop of the global pandemic, the increasing use of work from home, and the broader secular trend of increased digitalization. Before I go into my remarks proper, perhaps I could give a very brief introduction and overview of my organization. The Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, or CSA, was formed in 2015 and is the central agency tasked to protect Singapore's cyberspace. Our core mission is to keep Singapore's cyberspace safe and secure, to underpin our national security, to power a digital economy, and to protect our digital way of life.
Gwenda, can I just interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
Your camera is going behind your screen, I think, so we can't see your full face. So can you just move your camera just a bit so that we can see you while you're presenting?
Is this okay now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Okay.
Okay.
So as alluded to in our core mission, cybersecurity is not an end in itself, but it provides a foundation to enable a digital society. As Singapore harnesses technology to improve lives and livelihoods for all, it is important to ensure that these technologies are secure. Otherwise, we would be exposing ourselves to a multitude of threats that lurk in cyberspace. The need to keep our cyberspace safe and secure becomes more pressing as more aspects of our lives move online and more of our devices are connected to the web. This can result in a wider attack surface that can be exploited by the malicious actors. Often, we are unaware of the vulnerabilities in our systems as they become more interconnected and complex. For example, an internet-connected fish tank in a North American casino was used as an access point for hackers, which were eventually able to exfiltrate data from the organization. Securing our systems is made no easy as malicious adversaries continue to evolve and adapt to the changing technology environment. Recently, we have seen the proliferation of ransomware with a significant number of high-profile hits across multiple sectors. This has been driven by the rise of the ransomware for a service business model. In this model, a group of developers oversee the maintaining of the ransomware code, while another group is responsible for spreading the ransomware. New business models and modes of attack will continue to surface, and the onus lies with governments, industry, and users to prepare themselves to defend against hackers. My point on the changing threat landscape is not to be alarmist, but to illustrate that the cyber domain is incredibly dynamic. To prepare to defend ourselves against these threats and to build a trusted and secure cyberspace, Singapore launched our National Cybersecurity Strategy in 2016. The strategy is built on 4 pillars. First, we want to build a resilient infrastructure. Second, we want to create a safer cyberspace. Third, we want to develop a vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem. And last but not least, we wanted to strengthen our international partnerships. The first pillar on building a resilient infrastructure is focused on strengthening the protection of our critical information infrastructure, or CIIs for short. CIIs play a critical role in the delivery of essential services to our country, such as telecommunications, power, water, and banking and finance. While the physical protection of such infrastructure will always be indispensable, Cyber defense plays an equally important role. There have been reports of critical infrastructure such as power grids, water systems, and telco networks overseas that have been targeted in cyber attacks. To ensure that our essential services remain resilient to cyber attacks, the Cybersecurity Act was passed in 2018 to govern the protection of CIIs, and CSA works very closely with the CII operators to ensure the security of these systems. While our efforts have been focused on CIIs, there is increasing urgency to further strengthen the security of our wider cyberspace. To that end, Singapore will soon be launching the Safer Cyberspace Master Plan, which will describe how we intend to work with businesses, academia, and the general public to improve their cybersecurity. Protecting our cyberspace is not and will never be easy, and two aspects stand out that make the challenge of cyber defense unique and, in my opinion, exciting. First, the cyber landscape is extremely dynamic due to not only the furious pace of the change of technology, but also the cunning of malicious actors who are persistent and sophisticated. Secondly, the cyber domain is transnational. Malicious actors can operate anonymously from anywhere in the world, and there are no clear rules of engagement in the cyber domain. In Singapore, we work to overcome these challenges by driving innovation with academia and industry stakeholders, and by working together with international partners. Let me elaborate. First, as the agency in charge of protecting Singapore's digital domain, CSA must have innovation in our lifeblood. The government alone will not be able to provide all the answers, and it is essential, as the speaker, Minister played before me, also said, that we need to work together with academia and industry to nurture a thriving innovation ecosystem that can avail novel and useful cybersecurity solutions for government and the wider economy. At the foundation of innovation is basic research, and CSA is committed to growing our national capacity for cyber research and development. Since 2013, we have invested about 190 million Singapore dollars to the National Cybersecurity R&D program. We also welcome the best ideas and expertise to Singapore, and the NCR is open to international projects too. We have in fact conducted joint research calls with international partners such as the UK, and we invite researchers to reach out to explore how we can work together. To support the translation of knowledge into solutions, we have also put in place the Cybersecurity Call for Innovation. This initiative aims to connect sophisticated end users who may have very unique and complex cybersecurity problems that they face with industry stakeholders in order to catalyze innovation. In 2019, we issued 14 such challenge statements and 9 projects were eventually awarded. We will continue to explore ways to further build a vibrant cyber research and development sector, and we welcome partners to work with us to turn budding ideas into reality. Allow me now to talk a little bit about partnerships. Cyber threats are global in nature, and no single government can deal with the issues alone. The transboundary nature of cyber issues requires some universalization or international consensus to support coherence and coordination. This will help to build predictable modes of behavior in cyberspace. Singapore participates actively in international and regional discussions to support a rules-based international order in cyberspace. At the international stage, we participate in UN discussions at the UN Group of Government Experts and the Open-Ended Working Group to develop and implement the rules and norms for a peaceful, secure, and resilient cyberspace. In our cybersecurity discussions within ASEAN, we work together to strengthen regional policy coordination on cybersecurity issues of key importance in the region, as well as collaborate on cybersecurity capacity building of ASEAN member states, and we implement the norms and confidence building measures agreed upon at UN platforms. These international and regional discussions help to create clear rules of the road that are essential to the effective functioning of the digital economy. Singapore is committed to ensuring that such important discussions continue, pandemic or otherwise. To that end, we will continue to host the annual Singapore International Cyber Week, where we convene leaders across governments, industry, and academia to push forward pertinent discussions on cybersecurity. The Singapore International Cyber Week this year will be held virtually, and this offers the opportunity for participants to dial in from anywhere in the world. The event will be on the 5th to 8th of October, and I welcome you to join us for a week of exciting conversations with a distinguished lineup of speakers. Moving forward, the safety and security of the digital domain depends on all of us, governments, academia, industry, and users. We each must play our parts, and we can build a safer cyberspace for all and unlock the full potential of our digital future. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to our discussion later. Back to you, Amit.
Thank you, Gwenda, for a wonderful presentation, and do stay around for a quick conversation we'll have after the end of the other presentations. Now I'll ask Dato, Dr. Amirudin Abdul Wahab, the CEO of Cybersecurity Malaysia, to give his views on the subject. Dato, over to you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you also to GovInsider for inviting me to share our perspective with regards to cyber resiliency in context of a nation. Okay, let me change the slide. Sorry. If you look at the current global cyber landscape nowadays, it has evolved tremendously. And you can see it's no longer just about people-to-people connectivity, not just about internet, not just about social media, cloud computing or mobile devices, but it has cut across all sectors. And in fact, it becomes a norm now, where we'll see that it is in fintech, for example, in financial sector, even in transportation sector, etc. So we'll have all these new emerging trends of technologies like blockchain, AI, etc. So these emerging technologies actually impacted everyone. And with as we all know, the rise of COVID-19 recently, with more connectivity of the people and everything, not just work, not just communicating online, but also work online, etc. You can see the rise of cyber threat happening globally. And this is not just happening in our country, but globally, and in context of our country in Malaysia. We can see the increase of threats such as hacking or intrusion, harassment, etc. And the cases that we receive at Cybersecurity Malaysia through our Cyber 999 Help Center increases and rise by 82.85%. That shows how much the increasing threat happening, not only globally, but also in Malaysia. And also with now connectivity that we are having, not just about connectivity of people, but also I'll say internet of devices, internet of data and services, etc. We feel that the traditional security approach no longer sufficient to deal with the various smart cyber threats. These emerging technologies actually, as we discussed earlier, introduce emergent threats, and hence our approach should be equally intelligent to address the risk of threat and a potential attack. As you can see, having firewalls, IPS or antivirus, etc., are only effective on known threats, but are useless on unknown threats. And as such, the need to what we call defense in depth, covering a multi-layer of defense from policies and procedures, physical, perimeter, network, all this level, network or a host or application and data. This is the way approach when it comes to be able to be cyber resilient in the context of a nation or even in organizations. At the same time, the approach, even though it is important, being resilient is actually the way forward. Adopting holistic approach it covers all the aspects of people, policy, process, and technology. However, we need also to be able to what we call cyber resilient. That is having the capability or the ability for us to the organization to resist, to respond and recover from threats that will impact the organization, and also the how do we do business. So sometimes people confuse between cybersecurity and also cyber resilience. Roughly, they are very linked to each other, but they focus on different things. When it comes to cybersecurity, it's basically about the action or plan or program that focusing on reducing risk and implementing security approach. However, cyber resiliency is about action, plan, and program upon occurred incidents and what to do next. So it's about the ability to recover quickly from the difficulties, from the attack. It's basically about the toughness. Compared to the cybersecurity, it's about how we ensure that procedures are followed or measures are taken to ensure the safety of our organization. So it's all about ensuring business and operation continuity. Yeah. So it's about we have a proactive security measures put in place to reduce the risk of cyber attacks and protect the organization. However, at the same time, the need to what we call embed and integrate all the programs of cybersecurity into the wider business objective, and at the same time to ensure the resiliency of this program. That means not only be able to respond, the need to what we call to ensure the business continuity plan is there. At the same time, then we have to have a disaster recovery plan to ensure sustainability of the business and organization. In that sense, there is a need to approach what we call adaptive security. That means to be more proactive, dynamic, and integrated when it comes to approaching cybersecurity. And that is of 4 areas of not only being responsive, but also be able to look from the aspects of preventive, detective, and predictive. And this combination of these 4 elements is a way for us to approach what I call this, in summary, this adaptive security. Yeah? Adaptive security is actually an approach to cybersecurity that analyze behaviors and events and to protect against and adapt to threats before they happen. And when with adaptive security architecture, an organization can continuously assess risk and automatically provide proportional enforcement that can be dialed up or down. So in the context of cybersecurity, we in cybersecurity in Malaysia, we have developed and provide various services across cybersecurity domain and life cycle, from the aspects of predict, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and review. This is also in accordance to the NIST framework. And these are the various list of proactive and responsive services that includes also the aspects of we call it the predictive and detective capabilities. We have cyber threat intelligence. We have CIMA initiative, which is called Coordinated Malware Eradication and Remediation. And we have various type of other proactive and responsive services, at the same time covering the aspects of people, policy, process, and technologies. We believe that to move forward in this era, to be resilience and innovation, there is a need to ensure for a secure, resilient, and trusted cyber environment in order to sustain the progression and prosperity. In this regard, also, a more innovative and proactive adaptive security approach is required to address such situation. And when we talk about adaptive security, it encompasses the 4 components I mentioned earlier: predictive, detective, responsive, and corrective capabilities. In addition, our approach also has to be adaptive, dynamic, and innovative. It has to cover people, the process, which include policy insight, and also the technology. One thing also about cybersecurity, you cannot work alone. No entity, no one can do alone. That's why it is the importance of collaboration, strengthening public-private academia partnership and international collaboration, and also being prepared is the key to prevent biggest cybersecurity problem. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato, for a wonderful presentation. Now I'll quickly hand over the stage to Sam O'Brien, RSA's Integrated Risk Management Leader for the Asia Pacific region, for his presentation. And then we'll go into a quick discussion phase. Sam, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Amit. Just want to check, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you can hear you fine.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that you're all safe and well, as well as your teams and families. And I would also like to acknowledge the tremendous work that many of the organisations represented in this forum and speaking in this forum today, especially those delivering frontline services, are providing to their citizens, their nations, and of course to each other. Thanks also to GovInsider for the opportunity to share with you some insights from RSA's perspective today. What we hope you take away from this is really looking at digital innovation and resilience more from a risk perspective. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to evolve and impact people's lives in many different ways, and I'm assuming that this will be the case for some time to come. While the situation plays out, I often wonder how we would have dealt with this as a society with an event like this 50, 20, or even 10 years ago. Imagine trying to navigate the circumstances that we see ourselves face without things like smartphones, without services like Grab, or without things like VPNs and Zoom, so that many of us can keep working and living largely from home and the safety that that affords. I think it would have been significantly worse. And while there is still a digital divide for many nations to conquer, digital innovation has clearly made a difference to the way that society has been able to respond. And I truly believe that digital innovation and resilience are inherently linked and are incredibly important initiatives to continue to encourage and enable. But first, where did this particular trend start? Now, digital transformation and digital innovation are not new concepts. Many organizations, both commercial enterprises and government, have actually been building apps and moving to the cloud and enabling their dynamic workforces for some time, but they're proving to be extra valuable given the situation we're in right now. Thinking about the adopters of this over time, we have our early adopters. In many cases, the early adopters of digital innovation were looking at enabling things that would be faster, cheaper, better for their customers, better for their citizens. And ultimately, by doing that, they were differentiating their services and innovating. Look at the likes of Uber and Grab and the impact that they have had in the regions that they've opened up in. In many cases, the value proposition was radically improving customer experience. And the fact that they were cheaper was actually a secondary benefit. But that allowed companies like that to innovate and differentiate themselves. You then have the second stage of digital innovation adoption, which are the late adopters. So those that are looking at unlocking some of those same benefits, so doing things faster, cheaper, maybe not better, maybe just as good as the competition, because really they're just trying at this point to stay up. You look at some of the taxi companies, for example, around the region that have launched apps to make the booking process and other things like that a little bit easier, but in some cases it's been too little too late. Right, so we've seen this trend continue, and there are many organizations that have not gone all in on digital yet. That was still to do so, but putting that trend aside, what we've all encountered obviously recently is back in February and March, the COVID-19 event. And I think that really created a separation in those that had digitally adopted versus those that had not. For many that had digitally adopted, they found themselves having by default an alternate way of doing business. And I'm talking about enterprises and governments here. So operating in the new normal and being able to deliver services and products to your customers or citizens in a digital fashion actually set you up for keeping the lights on with that alternate way of doing business, and it really enabled many to survive during those first few months of the new normal. And it was absolutely key as well to helping support government initiatives like flattening the curve, because we're able to keep as many people at home as possible. What we're also seeing, though, is that as the trend continues on and we move out of the new normal into whatever the next normal might be, we're now looking at a longer term period where people are going to be working in different ways. And it's not so much that it's an alternate way of working because of changes in societal expectations. And as many of our speakers have highlighted this morning, really embracing and doubling down on those digital efforts. I do believe that the way that people are operating now will actually become the preferred way of doing business, where digital is no longer a nice to have or an enabler of efficiency or just a means of remaining competitive. But digital will now be a fundamental underpinning of business and, of course, of government. And government does have a role to play, not only in providing digital options for citizens to engage, but in setting up the policies to foster innovation, to provide a baseline of resilience for the broader society, and also, speaking from my customer's perspective, to enable the right practices around risk compliance and security initiatives as well, which I'll touch on in just a moment. Now, zooming in on a couple of these areas, this sort of new normal, next normal period that we're in, what I'm seeing across different elements in society, different types of organizations, that there are really changing expectations. So while the pandemic's accelerating change in expectations, preferences across many different groups, I'm just going to focus on three today. So first of all, for society, what we're seeing right now is that many forms of work, many forms of play, and many forms of learning are actually all moving online. And that is enabled by technology, but also enabled by the policies that afford people that option. both for company policies and for national policies as well. But we're also seeing that there's changing expectations from society because of the socially distant mode that we've been operating in. There's this social distancing mindset that's applied where people may not actually prefer to go back to the shops and stores that they were shopping at previously when there is an option to have something purchased over an app and delivered. So there's this apps versus shopfronts mentality that will play out. For organizations, it's about doing fewer things faster and on a digital basis. It's also about enabling the increasingly remote and transient workforces that we'll all be supported by, and designing our products and services and our offerings to our citizens in a way that is customer-centric. So it's not location-centric, it's not functional-centric. It's about actually engaging customers in ways that suit the way that they need to operate and the constraints that we may have at the time because of the pandemic. That also leads to a shift in preferences towards delivering things digitally where possible versus physical. You know, as I said before, you know, obviously to maintain social distancing, we don't want people rushing into to stores en masse to do things or lining up in queues en masse to take advantage of government services. So digital is really, really important. And as we've also seen, that mindset of innovating or else is very, very important for companies to adopt to ensure that they remain relevant and they remain fluid and tactile, given the circumstances that we're operating in. Now, finally, speaking on behalf of a lot of the companies that and customers that I engage with, when it comes to risk management, there's also a change in expectation. A lot of risk management organizations are really being tasked with being able to enable their organization to rapidly take on and trade off risk. So, for example, in the early weeks of the crisis, as many organizations were shifting to work from home, there were many that weren't actually supported by the technology they needed to do that, and their business processes weren't designed in a way to enable people working from home, but safety and business continuity took a precedent. So they may have had to make a shift in their risk appetite and their risk profile around areas like cybersecurity, just so that they could keep the lights on and so that they could keep people safe. And that was probably the right thing to do, but that need to be able to shift and trade off very quickly is not going to go away. Organizations are also going to need to address an evolving risk landscape. So we've already seen shifts in cyber attacks, in fraudulent activities. We've seen supply chain disruptions, and I think they will be hallmarks of the way that we operate for the time being, at least. And the final point for risk management is really about enabling resilience by default. And I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit more in my closing slides here. So I posit that while digital innovation initiatives that many organizations have pursued over the last few years were ultimately to deliver benefits, that an unintended benefit of that innovation is in fact resilience. So COVID-19 has highlighted that these two activities, digital innovation and resilience, are in fact inherently linked. Things like moving to the cloud, enabling mobility, providing digital engagement channels for customers and citizens were probably not pursued with the intent of building pandemic-resistant business models, but in many cases, they've actually done just that, and I truly hope that that continues. I also believe that this situation has validated the need for society to continue pursuing an aggressive digital strategy. So while digital has made us more resilient, we therefore need to continue being resilient, and to do that, we must continue pursuing digital. So it loops back on itself, and of course, government has a really key role to play in perpetuating that particular cycle. So while I've hopefully made my point that these two particular activities, digital innovation and resilience, are interlinked and that they complement each other, they also don't exist in isolation. They in fact exist as part of a risk universe and an opportunity universe that needs to be considered and managed. And that includes things like how we deliver good customer experiences, how we deliver our business and our services securely, how we mitigate fraud, how we maintain a strong reputation. And what I'm seeing is that those risks are all intrinsically linked. But given the rate at which many are having to make decisions in the new or next normal, I'm concerned that the risks aren't actually being adequately considered. And it could be the case that people are playing catch up, or that risk appetites have been relaxed to prioritize one risk area over another. But either way, a balance has to be struck, and we need a way to be able to empower our nations and organizations to be able to consider risks very quickly and accurately so that we can make decisions as quick as digital innovation and resilience demands us to. Now, I've mentioned a few times that I believe government has a role to play, so I want to elaborate on this a little bit. So there are going to be challenges that still need to be overcome as we move into the next phase of the pandemic, and government will continue needing to be heavily involved. Many organisations are going to need to transition out of a crisis management mindset into more of an operational resilience mindset. And I do acknowledge there are many regulations popping up around the world that support that, which is great to see. We need to be able to empower organisations to embrace their dynamic workforces and populations. We need to be able to innovate and enable resilience by default in doing so. And we also need to enable the management of increasingly dynamic risks. Right? So there are 4 key challenges that we'll start to see pop up more and more. Now, in tackling these challenges, especially digital innovation and resilience, I believe the government needs to lead the way by finding creative ways to deliver high quality experience and continue providing baseline services to citizens in ways that address the needs of the pandemic, but also that cater to long-term societal expectations. And for the broader risk landscape, I also believe that government can play a role in guarding the path. And how do we do that? Well, it's about providing the right examples, by providing the rightly and correctly considered regulations that ensure that those that follow them down this path are able to make good decisions in the context of the risks that they face. So just to close out my session, a couple of questions here as food for thought. So with this in mind, do you think that it's more or less important right now to be assessing risk as part of your digital innovation and resilience agenda? And furthermore, does your organisation have the frameworks and systems in place to make those decisions in the context of the risks that you face? And of course, if you'd like to learn more about the capabilities that we as RSA provide to our customers in helping tackle some of these challenges, then we'd love to connect with you. Do feel free to connect with me over LinkedIn, or I'll put some follow-on links in the audience group chat. If you are interested in learning more by way of some recent reports that we've done on how to build resilience in times of disruption, as well as some blogs on the area of operational resilience. Thank you, Amit.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Thanks for a great presentation. Now we have time for a quick chat on the subjects that we've just discussed. And from what I gather, 2 things: we need resilient networks, and we need innovation. And innovation has helped in developing resilient network. I think that is the sum and substance of all the 4 what all the 4 speakers have shared with us. But my point, and I ask the speakers to talk about that, is that at the moment we are in a peculiar situation, abnormal situation, if you want to call it, with the pandemic, and everything, whether innovation or resilience, is geared towards the pandemic. Now, one of the good side issues is that we've seen that these 2 work together and we can get a lot of interesting innovation going on. But my question is, how do we sustain this post-pandemic? Can we sustain resiliency of networks along with the innovation required for a digital society? Ben, you want to try and give it a first shot?
Sure, absolutely. So going back to my presentation there, I guess a couple of key points. Look, I really see this as being a necessity, right? So if companies and whether the governments as well are going to continue delivering high quality products and services, then resilience is absolutely key. So I see it as actually something that's non-negotiable. The ones that will progress faster and further are the ones that take it on themselves to put in place good cyber resiliency frameworks, good supply chain resilience frameworks, good operational resilience frameworks. The ones that keep up with the market will be the ones that follow suit with some of the regulations that I'm sure will come in, and that's another one of the roles that government needs to play. In terms of innovation, I mean, it really is a market force, right? So again, if we want to continue operating and driving quality and adopted products and services, they need to be ones that align with needs of customers, and needs of customers are changing very, very rapidly, almost week to week at the moment. So that rapid pace of innovation is key to keep up with this situation.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Let me quickly go to our 2 government officials here. Gwenda, Singapore is trying to do a lot for resilience and innovation side by side. So my point, like I asked Priya just now, how do you keep the momentum going even after the pandemic is over?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's a good question. And I think in all our experience, we have seen a lot of innovation that has happened in response to COVID. There has been, by some estimates, years of digitalization, acceleration, and transformation that have taken place in a mere matter of weeks or months. So with the innovation, it's not just how we work from home, but how business models have changed. I think the big challenge for businesses and governments to sustain this beyond COVID is for us to basically catch up in terms of the cyber measures and cyber resilience measures that need to be put in place that to make sure that the innovation and the digitalization that has gone on is kept safe. So when businesses emerge from COVID, there could be some temptation to kind of look at how they can cut business costs. And I certainly hope that businesses realize that there is a risk that they have taken in going digital, and that they should be looking, as Sam very neatly put it, they should be looking at how they need to strengthen their cyber posture and to enhance their networks rather than cutting cybersecurity as a cost component. So that's a big mindset shift that needs to happen. People need to see the balance between usability, cost, and the security components in a post-COVID world.
Thanks. Dato, you want to share your thoughts on this point?
Okay. Going back to my earlier presentation, you can see innovation and resilience, especially in the context of cyber, is very much linked. Yeah. As we all know, cyber resilience is about our ability to respond to cyber attack or data breach to ensure that our business are, I would say, continue. It's safeguarded so that it won't be interrupted. But then, whether it's during COVID or even post-COVID, technology keeps changing, and this is where the innovative approach of handling this must be there. And as I highlighted earlier in my presentation, with the approach that in the context of the cyber resiliency is this adaptive security. That means it's not just by being responsive, not just by being putting preventive measures, but we need to strengthen the detective and also predictive capabilities together. And this is the way, because we need to adapt to the various technology that is emerging out there. That's no longer just the traditional approach sufficient to handle it, but we need to also equally innovative, equally I would say intelligent in managing these changes. So that's will be my answer.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dato. Now, just to follow on that question is, broader context. I want the three speakers to think about this. Is that while we are fully on the same page as far as resilience and innovation, both are required and both are connected to each other, and that this needs to go on post-pandemic. But my point is, how do you inculcate this idea of building resilient networks, and at the same time ensuring innovation keeps on happening in the whole ecosystem? I know right now the governments and the Singapore and Malaysian governments, we just heard, as well as the Indonesian government, are doing a yeoman service in building this culture of resilience and innovation. But how do you make it self-sustaining? It cannot at all point of time be a government-led initiative in perpetuity. So, Gwenda, maybe you can share your thoughts on this, because even though Singapore is doing a lot, I mean, I'm talking about the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore in this area, but how do you make it self-sustaining so that every single company, be it a small and medium-sized enterprise to large enterprises, have this built into their DNA?
Thank you for the question. I would answer this along two big points. First, I think it's not sufficient, or it's not good enough just to expect every single end user to know how to take care of themselves, because the truth of the matter is a lot of people don't know what they need to do to protect themselves, be it businesses or individuals. So from the government front, what the approach that we're trying to take is to move cybersecurity further upstream. And what I mean by this is we're trying to work with to see how we can protect our core digital infrastructure such that in a sense we can provide clean digital services to the end user rather than requiring every single end user to take very complicated steps to protect themselves. So you can read more about this approach and philosophy in the new Safer Cyberspace Master Plan that I talked about that we will be releasing in the later part of this year. So that's the first big point about how government, we're trying to move things, the protective measures further upstream. The second point is, as many of my fellow panelists have also said, that cybersecurity is a collective responsibility and we all need to play our part. So there is still a role for end users, including businesses and individuals, to take to protect themselves. So I would break this down in terms of 3 A's in terms of how we help them do this. First is in terms of increasing awareness. If they don't know about cybersecurity, they don't know about cyber threats, they don't know what to do. So that's the first thing. And we do a lot in terms of helping individuals and businesses kind of know about the cyber risk that they face. The second issue is about tackling attitudes. It's much more difficult than awareness because it's easy to tell people what they need to know. But if people still think that it's not going to happen to me, they take a very laissez-faire approach to it. Part of the challenge for us is also to slowly shift attitudes such that people see that they can fall victim to cyber scams, to cyber threats, and there is a certain risk that they are exposed to. And the last A is in terms of adoption. So after addressing the gaps in awareness and attitudes, what are the simple tools that we can make available for businesses as well as individuals such that we can nudge them to adopt good cyber hygiene practices to keep themselves safe? So that's how I would kind of frame the overall response to your question. Thanks, Amit.
Okay, thanks, Gwenda. That's a very nice way of putting it. Dato, I'm going to come to you, but before that, I want to bring in Sam on this point to give us a sort of a private sector viewpoint about this ability to sustain the building of resilient networks while keeping innovation alive. What does the private sector think about this? Sam,
sure.
Come to you.
So a couple of perspectives that I'd share there. I mean, your point was really around how do you continue this sort of perpetuation around the government and private sector partnership to ensure that these things keep working in sync. And I think there's a couple of really, really good examples out there. If I look at one particular organization like NIST, for example, obviously defining a lot of the standards that both government and private sector organizations are aligning to, and not just around core areas like cybersecurity, but also emerging areas like privacy and technology risk management. But I think that's one of the really strong success cases of where that engagement between the public and private sector can work very, very well to actually set the pace for how both government and industry operate. So there's some fantastic examples out there from that one particular organization and many around the region as well, but just thought I would call that particular one out. So that partnership element is really, really key. So driving that engagement so that there's not, only the government perspective that drives the rules and the regulations. It's really, really about that partnership and engagement. Another point that I wanted to mention was around education, and this actually links in a little bit with what Gwenda was mentioning before, but really grassroots education around how to, not just be a corporate employee or how to be a government employee and operate in a secure way, but just how to be a citizen and protect your own life and run your own life in a secure way. So a lot of grassroots education campaigns, I think, are important in delivering on that outcome. And, I know just speaking from RSA's own perspective, over the years, we've been involved not just at the tertiary level, but the secondary all the way down to the primary schooling level to help educate young students and kids about the importance of cybersecurity and how to protect themselves online. And, I'd be very excited if, more governments were delivering on programs like that, because that will, over time, over the course of the next sort of 10 to 20 years, deliver into the workforce people who have that ingrained from day one.
Thank you, Ben. Now let's quickly move to Dato for his views on this aspect. Dato, you want to share your views?
Okay, when we talk about innovation and when we talk about advancements of technology, it will always keep changing in this digital environment. So the main thing is how to sustain and to ensure it perpetuate innovation during this time. I think the key thing is actually about the change of mindset of the people in the context of cyberspace. Whether they are in public sector or in organization, private sector, whatever. I think it starts with the people mindset change. That's very important. They have to see cybersecurity uh, and being resilient is important in their daily life, whether in their personal life or in their business and operational. And then from there, they need to make it as a culture, cybersecurity as a culture. And that's how, because to me, when it comes to the issue of cybersecurity or cyber resilience, or whether it's about innovation, it's all about people. And it has to start with the people change, starting with their mindset change, and later on the cultural change.
Okay, thank you so much. So we still have a few minutes, so I'll just pass the stage around for any last thoughts from the three panelists. Ben, you want to put in any last thoughts? 1 minute thought.
Yeah, I think so Dato, you said it very, very accurately there with the comment around culture. Culture and getting people on board with the journey is absolutely key. So speaking on behalf, again, of our own organisation, a lot of the engagement that we have with our customers is about how do they actually enable and foster a positive risk or compliance or security culture in their own organisation. Now, speaking about that from the private sector perspective, but it is also something I think is important from a government and public sector perspective. Thanks, Amit.
Okay, thanks. For the two, for Gwenda and Dato, who are from the government side, let me give this time for you to send out a big key message to our audience, which is a very good one. And so, Gwenda, you want to give say anything as a key message to the audience?
Okay, so I think the key messages would really be that cybersecurity is a collective responsibility, and government is doing what we can to secure the critical information infrastructure, and now we're moving towards to secure the larger cyberspace as well for Singapore. But as I said earlier, there is a very important role that businesses and end users need to play as well. And I like to say that it is really about a risk management approach, which Sam very neatly summarized in his presentation. It's like, if you want to buy a new house, it's not possible to find a big house that is really cheap, that's in an exclusive neighborhood. So that's the trilemma that we always talk about in terms of security, function, and cost. So as the end user, whether you're a business or individual, you need to figure out what are your security and your risk kind of exposure, what cost you're willing to pay, and what kind of security that you need for your business operations or your risk profile. So that's the parting shot that I would leave with the audience.
Yeah, okay. Dato, how about you?
Basically, I would say, as you know, the changes are there, the innovation must be there. And the approach is not just about technology, but it's also about the way we approach the whole cybersecurity and cyber resilience. And that need to be, I would say, innovative. And this is where I've highlighted earlier in my presentation, it's about being adaptive. Yeah? Adaptive security, that means not just being responsive or being, I would say, preventive, but the need to also look into the aspect of detective capabilities and predictive capabilities combined, and at the same time highlighting the stress on the aspects of people, mindset change, and culture.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'd like to give a big thank you to all our panelists and the minister who unfortunately couldn't stay with us. And we are well in time, thankfully. And I think we can just hand it over to the next stage of this wonderful GovInsider Live Innovation session that we're having. Thank you again, all of you, for taking the time to take part in this. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.